This week we will start with this essence of the Gita. It is called in Sanskrit Chatushloki. If someone understands this, they get the essence of the Gita. There is this concept of Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan in all Vedic literatures. Similarly, here Gita is also trying to give that in these 4 verses. The meaning of Sambandha is connection. What is my connection with God? Who is God? What am I doing in this world? And what is this world? What is my relationship with this world? So basically, our connection with the Supreme, our connection with this world, and our own identity, who we are. So these are the kind of knowledge described in the Sambandha. And Abhideya is, now that I know what is my connection with God, what am I doing in that relationship? So how to engage in that relationship with Krishna. So that is the Abhideya. And Prayojana is through that engagement in devotional service, what is the nature of that ultimate result that comes through the practice of pure devotional service. So let's see how Krishna explains that through these 4 verses. In these 4 verses, Krishna mainly speaks that he is the source of everything. So he establishes the connection that he is the source of us. All the energies that we see around, everything is coming from him. And then how do we engage in that relationship is through chanting, hearing, and remembering. And what happens when we do chanting, hearing, and remembering? He gives us the intelligence to come to him. That is the result of engaging in devotional service. Even if we are not intelligent, through the process of bhakti, we develop intelligence and the ignorance goes away. That means love for Krishna arises in the heart. So that is the prayojana. And this byproduct of it is that the ignorance goes away. So here Krishna is indirectly saying that prema will arise by dispelling of ignorance. We can explain this whole 4 verses in this one line. Our soul, when it understands Krishna's position, which is explained in the 8th verse, becomes devoted, as explained in the 9th verse, and becomes enlightened, as given in the verse 10 and 11. We understand Krishna's position, how to become devoted, and what happens when we become devoted is we become enlightened. So in these 2 verses, 10 and 11, the verse translation is that Krishna explains that he is the source of all material and spiritual worlds, and everything comes from him. He says, the wise who know this worship me with all their hearts. The value of understanding Krishna's greatness is not because he is a narcissist, that he takes so much of the space in the Bhagavad Gita explaining how great he is. No, basically, so that we can actually understand how great he is, that greatness can inspire us to a place of love gradually. He says, my pure devotees think of me, dedicate their lives to my service, and find joy in discussing and glorifying me. This is how one who really understands Krishna's position engages in devotion. And the 10th and 11th verses, to those who devoted to me with love, I give the understanding to reach me. People may have intelligence or may not in the worldly sense, but the real intelligence is to differentiate between matter and spirit and to know the source of both matter and spirit. So that intelligence comes to a devotee. For example, like Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Thakur, guru of Srila Prabhupada, was considered an extraordinary scholar. He was the chair of the Calcutta University at the age of 24. And he already wrote commentaries on Surya Siddhanta and put forth ideas which even challenged the foremost scholars of astrological calculations in India at that point. And he won over in those debates. So that's how intelligent he was. And his guru was someone who did not know how to read or write. It's mind-blowing to understand that someone who is such an extraordinary scholar in the worldly sense accepts someone who is a complete illiterate in the worldly parameters as his spiritual teacher. He was asked, you are preaching and doing so much, but we see your spiritual master is just completely retired in Mayapur and does not even meet or speak people. He's just chanting. He said, people think I'm achieving a lot, but my spiritual master is like the engine which actually powers the boat. People don't see where is the engine, but it's because the engine is running that the boat moves. He says he is the spiritual engine for my vehicle to move. Many times his spiritual teacher, like Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj, would come into the lectures of Bhakti Siddhanta, sit there and listen to it, and would be so happy, see my Prabhu is speaking so wonderfully. He did not think, because spiritual knowledge was completely independent of worldly literacy or understanding of what is knowledge or intelligence. Gaur Kishore Das Babaji Maharaj had such a consciousness where he could directly see the pastimes of Vrindavan. Consciousness is a very different thing. That is why Krishna is saying, to those who are devoted to me with love, I'll give the understanding to reach me. He will completely illuminate their hearts from inside. That's what he says in the 11th. Out of special mercy for his devotees, Krishna destroys their ignorance with the torchlight of knowledge. And he is dwelling in their hearts. Through that, he dispels all that ignorance and gives that real love for Krishna. So through that, everything comes. This is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Krishna is not speaking so that Arjuna can fight this war and win. That may be one level of understanding. The real idea of Krishna speaking Bhagavad Gita is to Arjuna, it's not just that you are a warrior, you are actually a spirit soul. And I am the source of everything, spiritual and material. So here, this is just one aspect of life that we are trying to establish some godly rulership or leadership. But more than that, through this, what he is teaching Arjuna is that you are not just a king, you're not just a warrior. You ultimately have a connection with me. And if you serve me, because today your service is to rule, and we see Arjuna meditates on this Bhagavad Gita later in life after Krishna leaves this planet and decides to renounce the world. The same Bhagavad Gita, here he will decide, okay, I need to fight. That is the responsibility. And the same Bhagavad Gita he will meditate on after that. Arjuna meditates on Bhagavad Gita and decides, okay, it's time to retire. So Krishna is not giving a simplified answer of you should fight or you should not fight. He is giving a framework for all of us to decide what is the right thing to do in life in every single situation. And these are the 4 verses that can actually help us. Okay, in every situation of life, how can I remain connected with Krishna? Krishna is the source of both material and the spiritual worlds. So that aspect does not change. Whether I'm in the happy phase of life, I'm in the low phase of life, whatever may be our immediate situation in life, that does not change the fact that Krishna is the source and he is always available for us to connect with him. So if we dedicate our lives to remember Krishna amidst the joy or difficulties of life and gradually find joy in discussing and glorifying him, then Krishna will give the intelligence to fine tune our lives, destroy the ignorance in our hearts, and achieve him eventually. That is the goal of life, because good and bad is part of everyone's life. There is no one in this world who can say that their life is just great and they have no problems all the time, or someone who can say I only have problems, I don't have anything good happening. It's always a combination. So that's the nature of the world. But overcoming all of that, if we can learn to take shelter of Krishna, then that leads us to perfection. Actually, let's get into the verses. This is flow of Chatushloki. So Krishna gives the summary in 10.8 and 9 and 10 of all the Bhagavad Gita. So we were discussing how this section is the essence of Bhagavad Gita. Understanding this will help us understand everything that Krishna wants us to understand in the Bhagavad Gita. Basically, he's saying, those who know I am the source of everything become enlightened and devoted to me wholeheartedly. So we will be reading those verses now, later, after this slide. But if you know the verse already, aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. So just there are only 4 verses, which is the summary of all of the Bhagavad Gita. But within that also the first verse gives the summary of all the 4 verses. So what is that? He says, I am the source of everything. And one who understands that what they become enlightened. The 9th verse explains how they become devoted to me. And 10 and 11 explains how they become enlightened. So this is one way of looking at these 4 verses. So let's go into the actual verses. Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojan. Sambandha means what is our connection with God, who are we, and what is our connection with this world, what is the connection of this world with the Supreme Lord. Abhideya is how do I engage in devotional service, how do I chant, how do I remember the Lord, what kind of worship I can do, how do I become more connected to Krishna through my personal practice. So connection, practice and perfection. Sambandha is connection, Abhideya is practicing the spiritual life, and Prayojan is the perfection of the spiritual life. So 10.8, I know it's very dense. If you notice, I have gone through in these multiple slides how to look at these verses, the various ways of looking at these verses. This is one way of looking at the verse. If you see the line here on the top, this is one way of looking at verses. That how a soul, when he understands Krishna's position, becomes devoted and enlightened. And the second way of looking at these verses is this verse. That 8 is a summary, and 9, 10, 11 are elaborating on that. This is another way of looking at these 4 verses. The third way of looking at these 4 verses is that 10.8 gives Sambandha, Abhideya and Prayojana, all the 3 things. 10.9 speaks about Abhideya and Prayojana, and 10.10 and 11 speaks about Abhideya. So we will explain all of these things. So this is 10.8. Finally, we are in the actual verse. I'm going to recite the verse. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samandita. So Krishna is saying, I am the source of all spiritual and material worlds. How does the Sanskrit match with this? Aham sarvasya prabhavo means I. Aham means me, Krishna. Sarvasya means everything. Here everything means spiritual and material. Prabhavaha, the source. Mattaha sarvam pravartate. From me everything comes. Aham sarvasya prabhavo. Everything emanates from me. The next line, everything emanates from me, is matched with Mattaha sarvam pravartate. Iti matva bhajante mam, one who understands. Iti matva, one who understands. The wise who perfectly knows this engages in devotional service. He does not say just devotional service. He says bhajante mam. They engage in my devotional service. He's very clear. He's not giving any confusion. They're not going to worship the demigod. They're not going to meditate on the universal form. They're not going to meditate on the oneness of the soul. No. Iti matva bhajante mam. Anyone who really understands that Krishna is the source of everything, everything comes from him, what they will do, bhajante mam, they will directly be worshipping Krishna. Bhajan means, it is a very intimate term. You know, there is a difference between the word puja and bhajan that Srila Prabhupada explains. Puja means that any worship, that today we could even be worshipping any celebrity, sports star, or all kinds of people. In India, it's like they kind of take it to another level of celebrity worship. They literally can be showing arti and all of those things. Puja is that you like someone, so you adore them. And it could be to the demigods, it could be someone greater in this world, forefathers. So puja can be like a general term where you adore someone. But bhajan is you just meditate on this person. You are giving yourself in love. Bhajan means it's from the heart. You are being fully absorbed in it. You're fully being attracted to it. So that is why Krishna is using the word bhajante mam. That it's not just a casual worship for some material benefit. Bhajante means like Radharani is doing bhajan of Krishna. She is completely absorbed in love of Krishna. So iti matva bhajante mam buddha bhava samanvitaha. They worship me with all their hearts. So they perfectly know Buddha. They know everything about Krishna. Bhava samanvitaha. With full emotion, with full love in their hearts, they worship they engage in the worship of Krishna. So this is 10.8. If you see Sambandha, what is the connection here given? What is the aspect of connection that Krishna is speaking here?
He's talking about devotional service.
Devotional service, like what is basically Sambandha is connection. So what is this verse? What is the aspect of verse where he says the What is our connection with Krishna? Yes, devotion service is there, but it comes as the practice. The love, okay.
Right.
What is the connection aspect?
It can also mean,
Sorry. Yes, Parnika.
it can mean the connection by taking shelter of the spiritual master, developing that relationship.
I'm asking the question right from the 4 lines that's on the screen. In these 4 lines, where is the connection aspect coming? What is the connection aspect in this verse that he is explaining? Krishnan Prabhu, Mother Ishwari, and then Purva.
Hare Krishna.
And this,
Yeah, I think he's saying that everything originates from me. Everything is me. That is the connection.
Yes, everything comes from him. That is the connection aspect. What is our connection with Krishna? He is our source. He is the source of everything. And that is the connection part. Ishwari wants to add something?
Yeah, I was just going to say the same thing, that he is the source of all spiritual and material worlds. And if
and
we
everything emanates from him.
and if we understand that, and if we're in devotional service with that understanding, then we can connect further with him through our hearts, not just through the motion of action.
Yes, that's perfect. So the connection aspect is the first 2 lines where Krishna is saying, everything comes from me and I'm the source of everything. All of the Bhagavad Gita is condensed in 4 verses, but he dares to repeat himself in the first 2 lines. He's not dumb to not understand that these 2 lines are in some sense a repetition. If you say everything comes from me and then you say everything emanates from me, it's the same thing to a large extent. But the Acharyas say the reason is this part becomes very clear that I have a deep connection with Krishna, which can never be taken away from the soul. It is very intimate. Like our parents, they are one of the most intimate relationships that we have because they have given us birth and they have maintained us. Krishna is saying he is that parent for us. We have come from him, he continues to maintain us. He is the one who is actually taking care of us through various aspects in this world. Maybe others are the instruments, but he's the one who's actually looking out for us in the form of the Paramatma, and always traveling with the spirit soul. So in that way, that's why he's repeating these 2 lines. Aham sarvasya prabhavo matta sarvam pravartate. I'm the source of everything and everything emanates from me. And now the practice aspect. Okay, now I get the connection. And what do? It's great to know that I come from you. Like, that's great to know. So, no, what does we do when we have that understanding? What is that line in this particular verse that speaks about the practice? What does the devotee do?
Engage all his senses in devotional service to Krishna.
Okay. So the wise who perfectly know this engage in devotion service. That is the practice aspect. So what is the perfection aspect?
Worshipping Krishna with all our heart. Is the
Yes,
same?
the
No.
Buddha worship Krishna with all their hearts. That is considered the perfection. Basically, you lose yourself, you lose your heart in Krishna. And sometimes devotees have that. I lost my heart in Vrindavan. When we actually understand who Krishna is and engage ourselves in devotional service, we end up actually losing our heart for Krishna. So that is the stage, that is the perfection. If we can lose our heart in Vrindavan, most of the times we end up losing our slippers, phones, wallets, or like we bring our hearts very safely back to New York City, wherever we belong to. But actually, we're supposed to be losing our hearts in Vrindavan, and that's what is the ultimate perfection of bhakti. And the next verse is going to speak about abhideya and prayojana. That means the practice aspect, which is how do you actually engage in bhakti? What is the practical ways that to understand what is bhakti and what does it result in? What is the result of engaging in that practice? Bodhayanta parasparam tatayantascha mam nityam nitushyanti cha ramanti cha. The thoughts of my pure devotees dwell in me. Their lives are fully devoted to my service, and they derive great satisfaction and bliss from always enlightening one another.
is the practice aspect conversing?
Yes, discussing about Krishna among themselves.
Yes. Conversing, enlightening one another.
Yes, Ishwari.
Also, that their lives are fully devoted to his service.
Yes, their lives are fully devoted to Krishna's service. And what is the perfection?
When devotees can't think or talk about anything else but Krishna.
Yeah, and they derive great satisfaction. They cannot think of anything else because they derive great satisfaction and bliss. So we are all looking for happiness in this world. We're all looking for that satisfaction. So how many of our endeavors are like a lot of us look towards or engage our attention in so many things: food, shopping. So many of these things are like sometimes are done for necessity of living in this world, but many times we do it more than necessary because we're looking for some kind of satisfaction through those activities. Like there's great food, and then we note that restaurant or particular recipe, or note that particular item, and then we try to eat again just to derive that satisfaction. Or we hear some music and it is so pleasing, we go back to, oh, I want here. But how many times we have experienced that the material things, just by repeating it, does not give the same experience. That which gave pleasure yesterday, there is no guarantee it will give pleasure today. And so we are all wanting that satisfaction and enjoyment. And Krishna is saying that tushyanti and ramanti, those two things, the satisfaction and bliss, can actually come in a very sustainable way and in an ever increasing way through this practice of actually engaging in bhajan. So it's not alone, matchitta madgata prana bodhayantaha parasparam, that devotees come together. So bhakti is not practiced in isolation. We may have certain circumstances, but still we come to take association in whatever way possible. It becomes better when we are in the association of like-minded individuals who also would like to love Krishna and who loves Krishna, and we get inspired from them and they get inspired from us. So in that way, we start speaking about Krishna. When two people are on a certain level of attachment to Krishna, it becomes very easy for them to immediately start speaking about Krishna. Otherwise, we might have to establish that relationship. We need to know each other well. That's why a general level of friendship among devotees is important. When we know each other well and there is a certain level of affection and trust, it becomes easy on that platform of faith, trust, friendship, and love to build the next level of speaking about Krishna. Most of the times we may come together because we don't have so much association in the city atmosphere. Many times we come together, and the 1 or 2 hours that we spend with each other, we are mostly catching up. How are you doing? What is happening? We have not connected as individuals so much, and we are not constantly in touch, and then we have been invested in life. So most of the times we come to the temple or go to programs, and all the time goes in the formalities of greeting everyone and saying hi. It's not mundane. If that already happened outside the temple room, when they come into the temple room, they could actually just focus on Krishna. But what happens in a city atmosphere is we hardly have an hour or two, and then we meet someone once in 3 months, once in 6 months. And then we are excited as individuals. You just greet them, catch up, and then it's time for us to go, and then we are gone. So we never get to build on that foundation of good relationships to start discussing Krishna. On our level, we need to have another beginner whom we can respect and trust to a certain extent. With that person, we could just speak about Krishna, express our devotional inspirations, express our devotional understandings, and ask questions in a way may not be like the deepest, difficult questions that the other person gets bewildered or feels like a fool that they cannot answer. In a very sincere way, in a very enthusiastic way, like how we have friends in college and school that we'll speak about things that are common to us. In that kind of a natural relish, we can speak about Krishna. Oh, I read this. This is nice. If we trust each other, we will be able to do that very easily. If there is not enough trust and no knowledge about each other, we may wonder, maybe this person will judge me if I just speak about Krishna. What do they think? Oh, what does this person think of themselves? They're speaking about Krishna. Those doubts will go away when we know each other well. That is why it is very important to invest in developing a community for ourselves. Hare Krishna, Krishna Prabhu.
Prabhuji, related question. This type of spiritual compatibility, maybe you can give us some tips on how to find the spiritual compatibility, because sometimes it's very difficult to know where a devotee is, because we may not know much, but how will we know if others will take us seriously or may not take us seriously? And
it's pretty much like dating. You just don't know how the person is going to turn out. It's some kind of a leap of faith and interaction. If there are too many red flags, then you move on. So it's a little bit of a risk, because there we bring in that aspect of Krishna. I really looking for a friend. Please send me a friend with whom I can actually discuss. So again, we can turn to Krishna and pray. It takes a lot of humility. It takes a lot of personal sacrifice, investment to develop that, because it is very important. That is why it won't come very easily. A lot of us are, oh my God, who's going to spend all that time? And then we may just go on ourselves, but we won't experience that subtle relish in devotion, because we don't have the Tashyanti and Ramanti. We don't have the nourishment that comes from knowing another devotee who's our closest friend and who's committed to bhakti. We can ask them when we are struggling. We could just tell them, oh my God, my mind is all over the place, and they won't judge us. It's not very easy to get it. We need to pray, work hard, and be that kind of a person for other people also. However, there will be some trial and error experiences. Sometimes we may trust someone and it may not work out the same way. So open up slowly, and I'm sure like the wisdom of living in this world to some extent. So devotees are also not of various levels. We all are wanting to be devotees, but we do have our own natures and plus and minus a little bit. We need all levels. Someone who is little senior to us, with whom we can have casual discussions about our doubts about bhakti and all that. But we also need friends with whom we can just hang out and read about Krishna. We may not know better than each other, but on our level, we can just happily discuss and share what we know. And we don't have the fear of being judged. And it does not come very easily. We need to look around and open ourselves. We have to become vulnerable in a matured way. We don't have to share all the life secrets with them. But at the same time, like, you're not going to open up everything in the first day of meeting someone. You go gradually. So the same way, you have to build those relationships in bhakti also. And I'm working on it. It's not that I have figured it out and I have it in my life. Most of my struggles in life is because I don't have that level of association. My ecosystem here in the living in New York City is very, very less. Like I'm on a weaker position in where I live, and I have lost that ecosystem of what I had in India, and that does affect me. And that's why I'm speaking this aspect here in this verse. And I'm not just going, okay, this is it, and then I'm moving on. I'm giving a very practical aspect to it. We all need to work on it. And I hope with all your prayers and blessings, I'll have that energy to put endeavor into it more and more. Krishna, I don't know if I answered your question.
That was a very comprehensive answer, Prabhuji. I'm going to listen to the recording again. You gave a lot of tips in this, and this is something that I struggle with. I live about 45 miles from the temple. People don't even know about Krishna. They don't even know about ISKCON around me. Even Hindus don't know anything about it. It feels like I'm from another planet.
You cannot bring it up in an incompatible association. It will only dampen your enthusiasm.
Yes. Thank you, Prabhuji. That was very comprehensive.
I just wanted to say that although right now I am in Pune, the temple is so far away from my house that even just going on Ekadashi days is so cumbersome. But if anyone from our group would be available just on Zoom at any time or any day of your convenience, I would be able to just speak with you, even if it's just for 15 minutes.
And that's why the idea was not just sharing here. So I also wanted to create sanghas like in person. Sometimes we all can meet. To some extent, we are trying to compensate the lack through these Zoom classes. This is not just for sharing knowledge exclusively. It's also to build like relationship among the participants. But I think it's not very easy, and I'm also not an expert in that. However, you all can connect, and we can facilitate. I wanted to create more in-person sanghas, but it does become challenging. If I'm not at the Bhakti Center on weekends, then there is no way I'm going to organize anything. So that's my challenge in trying to do that. Yes, you all can find those friends in your own communities where you are, and have, if you already have, take that relationship very seriously, because those friendships are very important. The whole understanding of this practice and perfection is that devotees who are compatible engage in discussing about Krishna, and that's where the real satisfaction and bliss comes from. So we all know, when we meet a friend and exchange what's happening in life, we feel such satisfaction. Meeting a real good friend, exchanging updates about their life, and being in their presence softens the heart and brings so much joy to us. We haven't gained anything externally. We haven't had so much money through that exchange, or like any other kind of sensory enjoyment, but heart feels so much satisfied. So this idea that just the sensory gratification can satisfy our heart is very unscientific. And this unscientific idea is so ingrained with us through the propaganda in this world, that you buy this soap, you will become happy. You buy this body moisturizer, you will become happy. You buy this bag, you will become happy. Happiness seems so cheap that it comes with your toothpaste, your toothbrush, your everything. But somehow with all of these things, we are not able to fill our hearts. And Krishna is saying, if you really want to experience that sweetness in your heart, that happiness and satisfaction, then that comes from discussing about Krishna in a like-minded association. And the next two verses, we are closing in before 10. Tesham satata yuktanam bhajatam priti purvakam dadami buddhi yogam tam yenamam upayante. He says, what happens when someone engages in that practice? To those who are constantly devoted to serving me, I give the understanding by which they can come to me. He says he gives the intelligence, buddhi. So this word buddhi yoga has been used in the 2nd chapter, a little bit in the 4th chapter and all that. We are seeing this word after a while here. That here Krishna is specifically saying he gives the intelligence. But the precondition is that we engage in bhajan. We engage in chanting the names. In this age of Kali Yuga, the main way of doing bhajan is actually chanting the names of Krishna. It has the potency and the blessings of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Srila Prabhupada, and all the acharyas. So the holy name actually reveals gradually. I remember when I started chanting, I had no idea what is Bhagavad Gita. And even after reading for months, I could not understand anything. For 2 years, I was banging my head with this book every day, but I just could not get past 5th chapter, and I just did not understand what is going on here. I wasn't very satisfied, and I thought nobody really understands, and they're just taking it. That was my idea of going to classes for the first 2 years. They would just start somewhere and go everywhere and then end somewhere, and it's never connected. It's like you're not speaking on the words, you're just speaking everything under the sun and then generalizing it. I had this understanding, like you're not explaining those. So I had this kind of a dissatisfaction, and when I met the right teachers, that's when I had the confidence. Yeah, people actually understand Gita and it makes sense. So with over years of connecting with teachers and continuing to chant and serve, so now some layers of Gita has opened up. Not because I have become intelligent than what I was before 20 years. In a sense, my ignorance has been dispelled of the bodily consciousness and the blessings of engaging in service and the blessings of other devotees and hearing from teachers. So they actually open up the various layers of knowledge. Spiritual knowledge is very mystical. It is not through one's intelligence and one's own understanding that it is completely understood. It needs devotional engagement. That's why it's very important that someone engages personally in the practice of bhakti. A lot of people know so many commentaries, so much knowledge about the deeper subjects of bhakti. But if they don't engage personally, they will, in their hearts, they are devotees in the sense they in their head, they are devotees. But in their lifestyle, like in their real life, the essence, sometimes they may be struggling. There is a Krishna saying here, bhajatam priti purvakam. If we actually engage in bhajan of like dedicating our time, that is bhajan. Bhajan means you give your time to Krishna. Because in this world, we know, like whatever we love, we give time. So how much time we all give to this particular gadget that we love? If you think you love your partner, you love your child, and you don't give time, they will not be satisfied. How many times you have heard it from your partner or from your children, from your family? You don't love me. And then you ask, why? I gave you money. I'm buying these things. Like, no, you don't spend time with me. It's as simple as that. It boils down to that. Like, how much time do we spend? So the same thing for Krishna also. I can say I love Krishna and I'm so happy. But how much time we actually remember Krishna? Where is our attention flowing? That is where our heart is. Krishna is asking for that. Bhajan means giving attention. Preeti Purvakam. Not for the sake of achieving any mundane things. Preeti Purvakam. For the sake of showing love. When we give our time to develop love for Krishna, that's what is called bhajan. And he says, if that is being done regularly, if we engage in bhajan, he says, give you the essence of Gita. In your heart, it will be revealed. He says, Enamam upayantite, you will come to me. So that is the perfection also. Any questions, any thoughts before we go to the next verse? What Krishna Prabhu is saying is the national average. We give anywhere from 4 to 7 hours. People living in the US give an average time of 4 to 7 hours per day to their gadget. Like, that's crazy, but we are all doing it. For various reasons. We cannot do without a lot of communication, and then everything else follows. Once the gadget opens, the world of Maya opens, then we all become absorbed in it. So, yes, bro. You are not alone in that. Anyone else has anything to share on this verse? Okay, so the next verse, Tesham evanu kampartam aham ajnanajam tamaha nashayami atma bhavasto jnana deepena bhasvata. That Krishna is saying to show them special mercy, because now they are engaging in so much bhajan, they are showing love for Krishna. How does he show the special mercy? He says, I show them the special mercy, dwelling in their hearts, I destroy the knowledge, darkness that is born of ignorance. That is, ignorance is mainly bodily consciousness. That deep conviction that I am this body and acting from that state, that is so strong. It's not very easy to let it go. It cannot be just removed by our own strength. Krishna says, when I show the lamp of knowledge, then the darkness of that ignorance, bodily identification, becomes weaker and eventually disappears, and then we become more spiritually situated. Krishna is saying how one becomes enlightened. Through the practice of bhakti, one becomes enlightened. Through engagement in devotional service, one becomes enlightened. And that enlightenment is personal. Krishna is not saying it is an automatic thing. He's saying personally he will do it. In the 10th verse also, he said, I give the understanding. And in this also, he is saying, I dwelling in their hearts destroy. I will do that. So it is his job. The removal of ignorance, Krishna is taking personal responsibility for it. Our responsibility is to engage in bhakti. These are the 4 verses that Krishna presents the essence of this bhakti. Do you see, if these are the 4 essential verses of Bhagavad Gita, do you see what is the path that he is glorifying so much? It's very clear. He is not speaking about work. He is not speaking about dedicating the fruits of your work. He is not speaking about going to the forest, meditating on him, or doing Ashtanga Yoga or Dhyana Yoga or Jnana Yoga. He is very clearly speaking about his devotees and the process of bhakti. So that is why this is considered the essence, because he speaks about what is the essential message he wants to give. So there are 3 practical benefits of remembering Krishna, which is considered as the main component of bhakti. Remembering Krishna empowers us with the clarity to know what is truly important for us. Because there are so many thoughts, emotions, our likings and dislikes. We become overwhelmed by that. But gradually, by chanting and remembering Krishna, we get a clarity. This thing is not serving me. I don't want to engage in this. This emotion is not serving me. These thoughts are not serving me. These habits are not serving me. So we get the clarity. This is good. This is bad for me. And it becomes very clear, like a day and night for us. First stage is we know what is good and bad. Clearly, we can understand. And then the next stage is we develop the strength to do the good. And in that way, our life becomes so much simple. We can get rid of so many unnecessary things from our life. We all have this experience after becoming devotees. So many unnecessary things in our life, we could easily let go of things. And there are some things which may still be lingering, and they will gradually go away to the extent we develop clarity and purity. The simplicity of life is a side effect of the clarity and purity that comes from practicing bhakti. The benefit that we receive is we become very clear in our head what's good, what's bad, and we develop the purity of the heart to do what is the right thing. And our life becomes so much simple, devoid of all unnecessary things. I hope you all agree with that. And it's one of the practical benefits of bhakti. And we see that in our lives. And devotion thrives in knowing Krishna, because without knowing who Krishna is and who we are in relation to him, devotion becomes a sentiment. So that is why knowing him, devotion thrives in knowing him, and not just knowledge. We have to love him. And then eventually we also receive his mercy. So this is Sambandha, Abhideya, and Prayojan. These three things. Knowing is Sambandha, loving is, that is engaging in bhakti, and receiving his mercy is our Prayojan. So those three things are covered in this section. And the practical essence is how remembrance of Krishna strengthens our devotion. Krishna gives intelligence to the sincere devotee. We may not be the scholars who can recite the verses and who understands all the commentaries and who knows all the various books, who may be able to speak excellently, who may be able to convince others. That is not the sign of intelligence at all. Krishna is saying, I'll give the intelligence to actually come to me. So for that, we just need to be a sincere person. We don't need to be scholars. Where your thoughts dwell, your love grows for that particular thing. It could be material, it could be spiritual. That's why Krishna is saying, rest your thoughts on me. Eventually, love for Krishna becomes awakened in our hearts. Remembrance of Krishna strengthens our devotion, attracts Krishna's mercy, and transforms our heart. These are the three benefits of remembering Krishna. It strengthens our devotion, attracts Krishna's mercy, and transforms our heart fully. And one thing that we can meditate this week is what practical steps I can take to deepen my remembrance of Krishna in my daily life. What are the small things that I could do to improve my remembrance of Krishna? So you can meditate on that for this week. And you can share it in the WhatsApp group. If you are taking any practical steps, like say, for example, I'm going to stick devotional sticker on my water bottle. So every time I drink water, I'll look at it. If you're making any changes and if it could be helpful for others and inspiring others, please share. Hare Krishna, Parnika.
Oh, I have a question because I agree, like, remembering Krishna throughout the day is very sweet and very nice. But it's also very distracting because, once you begin thinking about him, it's tough to stop and then go back to whatever you were doing. So, how do you balance it out?
There are two ways of remembrance. When a teenager falls in love, it disturbs the flow of life. They cannot function. They are lost in the world. When we come to bhakti, initially, there is a bit of that kind of infatuation. We think romantically. Remembering Krishna means everything else goes out of the window. But eventually, as we grow in bhakti, it's like a mother having a child. They are cooking, they are cleaning. But if you ask the mother, she will tell you that they are constantly remembering their child. Like everything they're doing is like in the background, the child is having. If you have a pet also sometimes, like they are in your mind. You may be working, you may be getting ready to leave the office, but they are in the mind. What is that person doing? If we see the worldly relationship, we can understand some wisdom from it, that how bhakti of Krishna gradually grows to an extent where we will continue to do, but in a background that you will have all that is connected gradually. It's good you're feeling like it is very distracting. It's not wrong, but at the same time, you have to be practical. That is why Prabhupada says, take out some time every day. Keep aside a certain time where everything else stops and you are just with Krishna. Gradually, as the bhajan becomes very strong, your own personal practice of how much are you able to give attention to Krishna when you are chanting is a sign of real love. Then how much you are wanting to remember when you're working and when you're having to deal with tough people in this world. So it's very easy. Sometimes you may feel, why should I just do all these things? I'll just remember Krishna. But the real idea is, how much are you able to remember Krishna when you're exclusively chanting the holy names? That's a sign what is in our heart. So it works both ways. It gradually gets better. Am I
Thank you,
making
Prabhu.
sense?
Yeah, you are. Thank you.
So, yeah. So thank you everyone for your attention, time. You all are free to engage in the WhatsApp. Use that group where you can share what you liked in today's section, or if you're reading Bhagavad Gita through the week, you're revising, you're hearing, if something touched your heart, you can share in that group. That's the purpose of it. It's not just for announcements. So feel free to make the group more dynamic. Yeah, Olga?
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna.
I have a question on when Krishna says Tadami Buddhi Yogam, do you think he means to say that I've set everything up in such a way that if you practice devotional service, you'll come to me? Or do you think he's saying that once you practice devotional service, I will personally sit there and review your actions, like down the list, like Santa Claus, to see whether you've been good or bad? And then if you have been properly devotional to me, then you get the present of devotional service. So do you think it's like specific to the individual where Krishna personally reviews the person, or do you think he just set up the process and then the individual engages in that process?
Thank you so much. It really is a very important question. Krishna is telling that it's not a system that impersonally works. He takes personal interest in each one of our lives. So he is invested in our lives. To know that the Supreme Lord, who's the source of everything, is described in verse 8, where he says, Aham sarvasya prabho matta sarvam pravartate. That's how great he is. But he has the time to actually give. Okay. In the 8th verse, he said, Aham sarvasya prabho. Everything comes from me. That's how great he is. But in the 10th verse, he's saying, I actually take personal interest. I may be so great, but I'm still taking personal interest in each one of our lives. However, it's not in the mood of judging, like, have you been good or bad? That is not the mood. The mood here is when he takes personal interest, he is reciprocating to the extent we want to love him. It's not he is judging, he is reciprocating. Like in love, you can have all the love you want, but if the other person only allows you so much, that's all you can actually show at one point. Like, it's a one-sided love affair from Krishna towards us. We don't love him. Eventually we start to love a little bit gradually. So to that extent, he is able to give us knowledge, because the ability to receive knowledge is the ability to which we love him, is the conduit through which we can receive the knowledge. But if our conduit is thin, then that's all we can receive. It's not the water tank does not have water, but if the pipe that is connecting us to our tap, if that pipe is like kind of having a block, then the water cannot flow. It's not that Krishna does not want to give us mercy. We are blocking it from our side. The more we open up, then the flow will naturally come.
I'd like to ask a follow-up question. Do you think that Krishna is sitting there all the time just watching you, waiting for you to make the slightest bit of effort? Or is it more like you make an X amount of effort and then it triggers Krishna's attention, like, oh, there's a person performing devotional service?
Thank you. Some of the commentaries are very clear in these verses, which says that when a person actually takes to bhakti, it's not just Paramatma. Krishna personally, he's not saying Paramatma will cleanse your heart. He's saying Krishna takes that position of the Paramatma personally for his devotees. It's a mesoteric explanation that Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur gives. He says when a person becomes advanced in bhakti, there is no Paramatma in the heart. There is Krishna directly in the heart. Because Paramatma is a delegated position. Krishna expands as Paramatma and he is equal to everyone. He says, for everyone I'm equal, I'm neutral to everyone. So in all our hearts there is Paramatma. However, when a person becomes a very advanced devotee, Krishna is so eager to know what's happening in their heart, because there is always thoughts of Krishna is happening in their hearts, that Krishna wants to personally witness that. He says, Paramatma, you take leave now. I will personally enter my devotee's heart, because he's always thinking about me. I Tomara Hridaya Sada Govinda Vishram. Narottam Das Thakur sings, in a devotee's heart, in a pure Vaishnava heart, the Supreme Lord is actually resting in the heart of a pure devotee. Because in all other hearts, he's actively hearing what is this person's desire. Okay, I'll note down in this life or in the future lives that needs to be satisfied. So the Paramatma is overworking throughout the day, taking note of all our desires and thoughts. But in the pure devotee's heart, Govinda is taking Vishram, he is taking rest, because this person has nothing other than thoughts of Krishna. So Krishna is like, oh wow, this is amazing. Finally, I have a break from all the chatter that goes on in the uncontrolled mind. So in that sense, Krishna takes these verses are exemplifying that when we become a devotee, Krishna personally comes to our heart when he's not delegating it. And the more we want to love him, the more he's eager. He wants to reciprocate more and more. And here the sweetness is more emphasized. It's not about what wrong I do. Krishna can punish us. It's okay, because he will punish us in such a way that we will become more attached to him eventually. If we are not willing to listen and still go about our old ways, then Krishna has to increase the heat. Sometimes he has to make us suffer, because it is his mercy. Mother Kunti says, it is your mercy that you pose these difficulties in my life so that I can remember you more and more.